Pokemon has been around for 20 years this year. Should I get out that Pokemon cake I made when I was 5? Nah, that's probably moldy by now. Over the years, Pokemon has solidified itself as the premium, monster-catching little child saves the world with minimal effort against mismanaged criminal organizations franchise. So that's a feat in of itself. It's tried many different concepts featuring the lovable monsters. Some have worked, some not so much. But today, we're going to talk about one of the more successful efforts, Pokemon Colosseum. Pokemon Colosseum was developed by second-party developer Genius Sonority. Basically, they have to answer to the Pokemon Company and Nintendo if anything gets screwed up. Yay, developers! Pokemon was in a weird limbo at this point in time. Because Nintendo had updated to the Game Boy Advance, they also upgraded their cartridges and connection cables. This meant that the original Game Boy couldn't connect to the Game Boy Advance via link cable, which was used to trade Pokemon between Game Boys. Basically, no Pokemon from the first 2 Pokemon games could be traded to the new Game Boy Advance Pokemon games. Although the Game Boy Advance titles Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire had some Pokemon from the first 2 games, not all were present. This was solved for Generation 1 Pokemon through Game Boy Advance remakes of Red and Blue, Pokemon Fire Red, and Leaf Green. However, Generation 2 Pokemon were still left out. The solution? Pokemon Colosseum. Released on the Nintendo GameCube in 2004, Coliseum was a hybrid concept, borrowing from the main series and from its console predecessors, the Pokemon Stadium series. If you're not familiar with Pokemon Stadium, what you need to know is this. You can battle your Pokemon in polygonal 3D, and play a minigame where Licky Tongue tries to eat as much food as possible in 1 minute. These are the priorities in Pokemon games. The Ore region hosts our new adventure this time. With its emphasis on sand topography, the atmosphere feels much different than previous Pokemon games. We begin our story inside a barren hideout, carved within the mountain range. Suddenly, an explosion blows open a side building, and in walks arguably the most badass character in all of video games. I'm sorry, I know I gotta keep this PG for the kids. This is Wes. I mean, you get to name him, but this is his true name. He's too cool for any other name, because Wes means, does Wes mean anything? Oh, it's short for Wesley, or Westcott. I feel like corgis are named Westcott. Back to my main point though, Westcott is just too cool for school. Look at those goggles, so shiny. He's got that movie star complexion too, but what really ties it all together is the white line across his face. Not the trench coat, not the gloved hands, the white line. It's just him stating, yeah, that's right, I'm awesome, deal with it. Or it could be sunscreen. Ore is pretty hot with all that sand. You know, maybe if I dress up as Wes, everyone will think I'm cool. Close enough. Anyway, all Western cowboy sees an arm attachment sitting on a mannequin. And like the badass caught he is, he just takes it. No ifs, ands, or buts. He snags that piece of metal and takes off on his motorbike as the hideout occupants run after him, their leader leading the pursuit. Okay, seriously, what is the stylistic choice with his eyebrows? It does not make any logical sense. Wes eventually makes it to an outskirt stand, where a body bag sits atop a mini truck. Eventually, these 2 guys walk out of the train and begin arguing over random bad guy stuff. Before driving away on their...
FalseProof.
Oh, hey, it's my buddy Kito. What's up?
Do you realize what you just said?
2 guys walk out of a train.
Before that.
He snags that piece of metal.
After that.
A body bag sits atop a mini truck.
Yes, does that not seem completely and utterly frigged up for Pokemon?
Well, yeah, obviously. Anyone can see that. It's surprising, especially for Pokemon.
Right, so maybe you should address that.
Maybe you should frig off.
Oh, how rude.
I guess he has a point. Pokemon Colosseum, from the beginning, gives off a very mature, dark vibe that most fans haven't seen before. It only escalates from here. After Wes explores around for a bit, he is stopped by a rider named Willie, who apparently rocks the pink hair with no color coordination at all. Willie asks for a battle, and you oblige. This is where the action begins. Oh my god, an Umbreon and an Espeon! Why am I so excited? You see them in the opening cutscene, but they're in 3D doing battle! This is so cool! Obviously, the battle ends with ease, and Willie sends you to the next area. Phoenix City. You arrive and see the body bag from before. Again, still a really dark plot point for Pokemon. The goons notice you and challenge you to a battle. After defeating them, you untie the body bag and out pops Rui. Rui is very important to the plot, as you'll see soon. Bystanders send Wes and Rui towards the mayor's house. As you arrive, a mysterious man walks out. He enjoys your aura, I guess? Wes and Rui meet the mayor and explain the situation. The mayor assures you that your fears are unfounded. Leaving there, you run into some goons from the criminal organization Team Snagging, which Wes was a part of, apparently, until the whole kablooey thing. You know, the explosion? Anyway, these guys fill in the blanks about the arm attachment, which is now called the Snag Machine. It's used to capture shadow Pokemon, or genetically modified Pokemon. Modified in the sense that their hearts are shut off and they are filled with hatred and rage. Now this sounds silly, but remember, it's Pokemon. Eventually, more bad dudes take over the city, and the mayor's office is run over by the two goons who kidnapped Rui, and their boss, who has the coolest afro ever. You battle the goons again, but they have a shadow Pokemon in their midst. But how can you tell the difference between regular and shadow Pokemon? Rui, of course. This is what her purpose is in this game, detecting shadow Pokemon. Was the suspense worth it? The first shadow Pokemon you encounter is a shadow Makuhita, who's not very hard to catch. This is how the game introduces the shadow Pokemon mechanic. Detect, then stun and weaken until it's caught. The difference here is that after all those years of you trying to catch other trainers' Pokemon, you can finally catch them without cheating. Oh, glorious day! Sorry about that. The goons and their boss escape, and this is where you learn of the game scenario. Rui can see shadow Pokemon, and that's why she was kidnapped. Now, since you have the super awesome snag machine, and the badass look, and the will to capture other people's Pokemon, it's obvious that you're the hero and you've got to capture all the shadow Pokemon. 48 to be exact. You can't skip out, you gotta get all 48. Oh, and you have to stop the bad guys. Basically, there are two organizations, Cypher and Team Snagging. Cypher is the big evil, while Team Snagging is a sporadic annoyance. It's the Pokemon you all know and love, with more edge. Pokemon Colosseum plays like any other Pokemon game. You battle and capture Pokemon, training your team to fend off any foes. The mechanics are a bit different though. For starters, saving can only be done through computer terminals located in Pokemon centers, important buildings, and random points during the game. I get that it adds some challenge, but it doesn't add very much. It only increases the amount of backtracking you'll have to do. Another subtle difference lies with field items. Instead of Pokeballs strewn about, you have Pokeball-shaped chests. I thought it was a cool touch, okay? A big change is the emphasis on double battles. Unless you're grinding through a battle challenge or have a random trainer with one Pokemon, all battles are double battles. I guess it was to emphasize the new Generation 3 Pokemon models. They look cool, sure, but double battles are weird. Oh well, I get an Umbreon and an Espeon, so I'm cool with that. The biggest mechanic of the game, arguably, is capturing and purifying shadow Pokemon. When a shadow Pokemon is caught, the purification process begins. I'm the only one who can save you. When a shadow Pokemon is caught, the purification process begins. Various purification aids include battling, walking with the shadow Pokemon in your party, and using scents purchased from a Pokemart. Once the shadow meter has emptied, the Pokemon is ready to be purified. The only way to do this is through the Village of a Gate, home of the Relic Stone. Basically, the Relic Stone lets you purify any Pokemon whose heart has completely opened. Although it serves its purpose well in the story, it does add somewhat to the backtracking. Gotta save those Pokemon though! Along your journey in Ore, you'll fight against many members of Cypher. But arguably the best and coolest of them all is Mirror B. You remember the Afro guy? That's Mirror B. The cool thing about Mirror B? His theme music. Oh yeah, that's some good stuff. The art style of Pokemon Colosseum is quite interesting. Since the game centers around the idea of capturing, in basic terms, damaged Pokemon, the game world has matured in comparison to its predecessors. Nothing about this game feels completely clean. Even nice areas like Phoenix City almost have this weird sheen to them, as if they're polished to distract from the underbelly of society. Compare that to Pyrite Town, an area carved into the mountainside where the low-income citizens of Ore reside, and you can see the distinction. It's a great contrast and adds depth to the world itself. The music of Pokemon Colosseum is crucial in player immersion. As this was the first Pokemon story-based game to be released on disc, the soundtrack is fully orchestrated. Music director Tsukasa Tawada did a great job structuring the soundtrack to relate to the world. The battle themes are tense, giving you a feeling of urgency every time you challenge a new trainer. The incorporation of jazz is prominent as well. Obvious in Pyrite Town's song, but still present in the pre-gym song. The Cypher admins use some very epic music. The underlying feeling of fear differentiates these battles from normal encounters. And of course, Mirror B's music. Although one area seems to weird me out, the construction site. There's no music at all. This seems kind of weird, right? Almost as if it's building to something. Now this part will be discussing the story and endgame in more detail, so fair warning, there will be spoilers. Make sure to click the annotation or skip ahead to the time code given to avoid spoilers. Everybody ready? This is how Pokemon Colosseum ends. After Cypher can no longer throw any more hazards in your tracks, they finally give up and say, you know what? Here's every legendary Pokemon ever. You win, you're the greatest, please don't kill us. Actually, I would be okay with that ending. Really though, here's what happens. After you defeat all the trainers in Cypher's main Shadow Pokemon lab, you're taunted towards the newly finished Regalm Tower, where the construction site was. Boom! Dropped some primo info on you there, didn't I? I gotcha. I told you it was a big thing. You remember all the Cypher admins, right? You get to fight them again. Luckily, if you miss Shadow Pokemon, they should still have them in their party. After defeating each admin, you'll get a colored key from them. There's a central room where the keys fit into Pokeball-shaped wall indents, opening the door to the final confrontation. Well, not exactly. You go up the central elevator, which rises into the middle part of the tower. It's a very cool-looking elevator. The game relents and gives you a save point before thrusting you into another conflict. This time, it's Gonzap, the boss of Team Snagging. He reveals that Snagging has been working underneath Cypher to distribute and use Shadow Pokemon. He plots to defeat you here and now. That doesn't happen. Honestly, this was my least favorite part of the story. You could have built Gonzap up to be formidable, to have a bit more personality and edge. Instead, his Pokemon are blown away with ease, and Gonzap whimpers back into the darkness. After defeating Gonzap, you head up the final elevator to the final battle. Well, not really. I knew you looked suspicious. He taunts you beforehand from the announcer's table, waiting for you to break. When he realizes you can't be stopped by ordinary Cypher members, he takes matters into his own hands. This man is Nascor, and he's the final battle, the final match, the leader of Cypher. Well, they get it. Let's just explain the point. Nascor is tough, and his Shadow Metagross is hard to catch. But eventually, he falls like the rest, and you've won. You're the hero. Nascor is shocked, but is reprimanded by a mysterious voice. It's revealed that the voice was SK, the mayor of Phoenix City, who, as it turns out, is the real leader of Cypher, Evice. Don't worry, this is the real final battle. Evice is tough. I'd recommend getting all your Pokemon in your party to around level 53. His Tyranitar is tough, and Sandstream will anger you into rage quitting. With some patience, he can be defeated. And now the game is over, yay! The story has finished, but there's still some post-game content. You must find and capture the rest of the 48 Shadow Pokemon. Luckily, a group of intelligent underground children decipher some data and show you where to go. Also, at this point in the game, you have the Master Ball, obtained from Rui's grandfather Egon, the Agate Village Chief. In Pokemon Colosseum, there's a Pokeball capture glitch that works without fail. You need at least 2 Pokemon in your party, both in battle, and at least 1 other Pokeball in your bag. With the first Pokemon, select the Master Ball for snagging use. With the second Pokemon, go back to the Pokeball menu, but switch the order of the Pokeballs by pressing X. You can exit out and use a move safely. What the game thinks has happened was that you selected a Master Ball from slot 1. However, With the second Pokemon's move, you move the Master Ball from slot 1 to another slot, replacing the Master Ball. The game will still assume you're using the Master Ball and throws a Master Ball, instantly capturing the Pokemon. What's odd about this glitch is the fact that the other Pokeballs aren't used up either. So this glitch can be used over and over from the moment you get the Master Ball. Capturing the rest of the 48 Shadow Pokemon is a bit of a doozy. You have to travel to various locations to trigger emails from your underground friends, telling you where the Shadow Pokemon are and where they might be. Eventually they find Mirror B near their home, the Under, taking an elevator to a pit below their underground city. Through various means, you make it down there to an area known as the Deep Coliseum. You'll have to battle your way through 5 waves of trainers, albeit with healing after each round and no distinct game over. The final competitor, the Deep King, has a Pokemon for you to capture. After clearing the Coliseum and capturing 47 Shadow Pokemon, you receive an email with images of you attacking other people. With no recollection of this, you're sent once again on a wild goose chase, eventually arriving at the game's first area, the Outskirts Stand, and seeing a man identical to Wes. Battling him will reveal the final Shadow Pokemon, a Togetic. Capturing it clears the Shadow Pokemon list. Now here's the fun part: purifying all your Pokemon. Luckily, there's a glitch for this too. Head to a gate village, run up the hill, turn left, and run into the first cliff. If you glitch out the screen while running, you've got the first part going. Next, with the thumbstick still pointing downwards towards the cliff, unplug your GameCube controller and move the thumbstick 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Plug the controller back in, let go of the thumbstick, and Wes will run into the cliff, glitching out the screen. Since walking with Shadow Pokemon purifies them, this speeds up purifying all 48 Shadow Pokemon. The game resets the thumbstick when you unplug the controller. However, when you plug back in holding the thumbstick, the game thinks that's the default position of the thumbstick. So when you let go of the thumbstick, the game thinks you're pointing it downwards and triggers that action as default rather than standing around. Once all the Pokemon have been purified, you can now go through the final section of the game. Save and head back to the main menu and enter a Coliseum battle. Select the Mount Battle Challenge and make sure to use your Pokemon from story mode or this will not work. Basically, you have to grind all the way through 100 trainers on Mount Battle with your story Pokemon and scale the volcano through hard work and cheating. I mean determination. At the top is the Mount Battle leader who looks a lot like Egon. After defeating him, you receive a Ho-Oh. You can now trade it to your Game Boy Advance Pokemon game. Pokemon Colosseum is an interesting experiment. It takes the tried and true formula of Pokemon and adds a bit more edge. The world is not as welcoming as past iterations. Your main character's first appearance shows him committing theft. A girl is tied up in a body bag and taken prisoner for being a witness to a crime. Pokemon are broken down physically and psychologically until their hearts submit. This is a clear contrast to the main series Pokemon games. However, Coliseum suffers in one area: its story. Although the dynamic of Wes and Cypher is interesting, the payoff is not. The final bosses are only seen seldomly and pose no real threat to the player while they run through the lower echelons of Cypher. Although this was marketed towards kids, having an intriguing antagonist that poses a threat is something even kids can understand. Nonetheless, Pokemon Colosseum is still a fun game to play through, and I would recommend it to any Pokemon fan or anyone who feels that the main series Pokemon games are too polite. It'll muck up your view of Pokemon. Thanks for viewing the review. If you'd like to watch more, you can click an annotation to go see some more reviews. Thanks to Kito for providing his voice. I'm FalseProof, and I'll see you next time.